Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, our time in New York is basically over. We're in line right now to get on a cruise ship and take off on a cruise. We're sitting around in a cruise terminal right there. There's Mrs. Sujano, and well, it's going to be a couple hours before we hit on the cruise ship, so might as well talk about some news. And first on the docket is PlayStation 3 emulation with RPCS3. Now, RPCS3 just got an update to version 0.33 and has a whole bunch of updates. So with this update, they say that there's 490 new commits, 570 source code files that have been edited, 23,149 lines of code were added, and 61,769 were deleted. On top of that, there were 20 code contributors and 122 days of development. So if it's been a while since you've updated RPCS3, you may want to pick up the latest version here. Moving on, and we're talking about MAME, which stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Multiple Arcade Machine Emulation, depending on how you want to interpret that. Anyways, it appears that MAME on iOS has taken one step closer to get on the App Store. There's a lot of back and forth between the development team and Apple, and it turns out that Apple is willing to put this on the App Store, provided the people who are working on MAME for iOS get permission from the MAME team. Now, MAME is 100% free and open source, and what someone has done here is taken the open source code and made it work on iOS. Now, in terms of getting permission, that may get a little bit sticky depending on what's going on here. I mean, if the people behind MAME are not happy with the port, maybe it's not a good representation of MAME, maybe they're charging money for it, maybe it's got ads baked into it or something the MAME team doesn't agree with, then MAME for iOS is not going to get permission. It'll have to release under a completely different name and arguably also violate GPL licensing. So we're going to see what's going to happen here. I'm assuming everything is okay, but you never know. Next up, we're talking about PlayStation 4 emulation with RPCSX, not Chad PS4. Now, we talk about Chad PS4 quite a bit, and that's because that emulator keeps making massive improvements in leaps and bounds. Well, it turns out that RPCSX developers are still hard at work here. So they just made a massive update here with a whole bunch of different commits. The big caveat being that the fact that RPCSX is for Linux only. So it's not for Windows, it is for Linux. But if you're into PS4 emulation and you're running Linux, you may want to pay attention to RPCSX. Now, there has been no official announcement about improved compatibility, improved performance, or really anything like that. But at the same time here, I mean, seeing commits being merged, seeing improvements being made to the emulator is amazing in my opinion. And I'm a few whiskeys deep, so I apologize. We're on the cruise ship right now. Things are going really well. I'm going to try not to slur words and continue on with the news. And on a side note here, I know this has nothing to do with emulation, but this is a pretty cool view right now. I mean, there's a whole bunch of old jets and planes and also an aircraft carrier. This is pretty darn cool. And I think that's a submarine down there. I could be wrong. It seems a lot smaller than some of the other submarines I've seen in real life. Maybe that's because part of it is submerged. Who the heck knows here? If you know anything about this stuff, let me know in the comments below, because from a distance it looks really cool and something I kind of wish I saw in person. And speaking about stuff that's not related to emulation, next up we're talking about Capri Sun. Now, there was a rumor online the other day about Capri Sun changing their packaging, going from those pouches you got to stab with a straw to bottles. A lot of people seem to be up in arms about that, saying that Capri Sun is having an identity crisis. Well, it turns out that that identity crisis is not real. Capri Sun has weighed in on the matter and says don't believe everything you see on the internet, and that they're not changing from their iconic packaging. I haven't had a Capri Sun in years, so I couldn't really weigh in on the matter. I have had some whiskey though. Next up, we're talking about Taki Udon and their upcoming low-cost FPGA. Now, it turns out that moments before launch, Taki Udon put the brakes on absolutely everything. He explains everything in a Twitter post, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below, or X post. Anyways, here he explains it in detail. There was a misunderstanding of sorts, and instead of ripping off someone else's design, he's putting the brakes on everything and trying to honor GPL licensing as much as he can, or absolutely honoring it 100%. So he's contacted the developer of that specific board that they're utilizing and trying to figure out a way to make everything work. And he says here right in the Twitter post, I got in contact with the board creator. We will add a sticker of the original silk screen on the back of the PCB for the existing parts. I will also personally donate revenue from these boards to the creator's Patreon. That is good faith move from Taki Udon. Last up here, we're talking about NACON, and they've announced the brand new controller here, the Revolution X Unlimited, and they're marketing this one as a more premium controller. Now, this new controller is for the Xbox and PC, and they say here NACON's R&D team has put an enormous amount of work to design a controller that will meet the expectations of the most demanding gamers. Well, I guess we'll have to see about that based on their specs. So no surprise here, they have Hall effect joysticks. The battery on this, they say, is going to last over 10 hours on a single charge. And there's also an LCD screen, and they say it's in the middle of the controller, and players can save easily different game profiles and navigate between them without the need of the app on the Xbox console or PC. And I can say right away, doing this all on the controller without needing an external app is a big win. Now, this controller, like most controllers that are more premium, will have 3 different connection modes. It'll be wired and also wireless via 2.4G with a dongle and Bluetooth. And they say here there's going to be 6 programmable shortcut buttons, a D-pad that has micro switches, triggers with micro switches, 2 alternative D-pads, 6 extra weights, and stick heads. I'm assuming this controller is not going to be cheap, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. It releases sometime later on in 2024, and I'll drop a trailer to this one in the description below, and feel free to check it out. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. She's at home with family. She's being very well taken care of, and they're very happy to have her. They'd probably want to keep her if we didn't come back and take her away. Anyways, we talked about a bunch. Let me know your thoughts about anything we talked about today in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate. Save your state.